The Halswell Residents Association, David Hawke. Welcome.
Okay. Oh well, thanks for listening to us today. So on my left is John Bennett, who's the chair of Halswell Residents Association, and I'm the secretary. So my name's David Hawke. So this year for Halswell Residents Association is a special one for us. It's our 25th anniversary. So from before our association's inception in 1994, Halswell's obviously been growing enormously, and I think as an association, something that we've tried to do right through is advocate positively for a social and physical environment that will stand our area in good stead in the years to come. There are 3 points that we want to emphasise today from our written submission. So we're going to reiterate some of the good work that City Council has been doing in Halswell. We want to bring to you from our written submission some recommendation for transport-related improvements to the draft annual plan. But most of the time today that we've got allocated, we want to spend on the, talking about the money to restart development of a Christchurch local alcohol plan. So first up, we've had our 2 council-built skate parks have finally been opened for use this year. They're very well used, and they are, we think, a testament to the commitment of your staff and of the community board walking alongside the local community right through the 10 years or so that it took us to get to this point. Secondly, the Quarryman's Trail major cycle route project is well on the way to completion, and we're looking forward to that completion in July enormously. I guess that leads nicely into some of the points that we want to emphasise on other transport-related components of our submission. In the draft annual plan, there's a bringing forward of the Norwest Arc major cycle route, and we strongly support that. As I guess, as an observation, construction gets underway. It'd be good to get some more emphasis from City Council on the size of central government's contribution into these major cycle routes. There's still a perception out there that it's all ratepayer money, and as the construction gets underway, a bit of emphasis there we think would be a bit of a hearts and minds job. Something that we've long advocated for is a safety focus on our streets and roads as a key way of encouraging active transport and the community cohesiveness that results from people walking and biking. Part of this has been an advocacy for lower speed limits, and that advocacy from us has stretched back many years. But we're actually getting some pushback now from some residents on the changes that have been made, and their concern is primarily over enforcement. So people don't mind so much the lower speed limits themselves, but they see the whole exercise as pointless if they are not actually enforced. It's worth pointing out at this point, we have also been talking with our MPs about the traffic policing side of things, but there is a council involvement as well. It's interesting that it's not just the speed limits that people want to see enforced, it's all road rules. And we're not psychologists, obviously, but we think that people are much happy to accept limits on their behaviour if they see the rule-breaking other drivers, obviously not them, are held to account, and people hate seeing others getting away with bad behaviour. So something that's come through from people in our community is a comprehensive red light camera program across the city, so not just talking Halswell here, across the city. And we actually highlighted that a few years ago when we came to the ITE committee about endorsing Vision Zero, which you've heard a bit from central government recently. Similarly, a program of speed trailers as an educational tool. And there are a few, but we need a lot more. Finally, in the transport section, we want you to change the categorisation of the Curlet's Rights Lincoln Passenger Transport Improvements Corridor. We explain in our written submission we strongly support the money set aside for this project. We accept that bus priority from Halswell isn't going to happen overnight, but as a council we think you really do need to get on with it. Finally, the local alcohol policy. We thought we'd start off here by outlining the effects on us of not having a local alcohol policy. We've been heavily involved in objecting to an application for bottle store in a quiet residential neighbourhood then preparing our appeal. As an organisation, we put our energies into projects we think we can succeed at. Anzac memorialisation, skate parks, speed limits, cycleways, public transport improvements, extension to Halswell Domain, etc. Something we encountered early on is that there's no guidance other than the Sale and Supply of Liquor Act as to whether a bottle store application might succeed. With a local alcohol policy to guide us, we would have been able to come to a considered decision as to how much, if any, energy we should put into the process. It's really important to point out that the process of preparing and presenting our application to this single licence application and filing an appeal has essentially sidelined our association since August last year, and the process is still ongoing. In our written submission, we go through some of the obvious things that we've not been able to do because of the bottle store issue. So one of the things that we thought we'd highlight is that effective a local alcohol policy on Christchurch as a just city, embodying democracy, diversity and equity. Halswell's not the only suburb in town, obviously, to have potential bottle store owners lining up for licences. We've got residents with the expertise and time to put into the objection process. We're aware that not all parts of town have these resources. So that's an equality of access issue for those folk, a question of social justice, we think. You did spend quite a lot of time developing the Christchurch Alcohol Action Plan, but District Licensing Committee has pointed out on their decision that that actually has no legal standing whatsoever. So that process of developing that plan has actually got us nowhere. Finally, if that doesn't convince you, Dunedin has a local alcohol plan. It's working. Christchurch should have one too. You pulled the plug a few years ago and it's time you put it back in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tim, Yanni.
Well, as I had before, I just want to thank you guys for being so sensitive to the Addington community with regards to the rebuilding of Lincoln Road for public transport. Many communities on the outskirts don't look at the effects on the internal communities, the older communities. You guys have, so I just want to thank you very much for that understanding and cooperation. Cheers.
Yeah, I would say that when we put in our submission on that corridor that just came up, we were really, really strong that it had to be engineered as bus priority, not as an excuse for putting more cars in and four laning. Yeah.
Yanni?
Yeah, thank you for your submission. I was really taken with the fact that you talked about the impact of the alcohol licence application and the time taken with it and the appeal, that it meant that you weren't engaged with draft our space plan.
Yeah,
that plan's only had less than 100 submissions. Yep. The previous UDS had over 3,500.
Yep.
We're going to be asked as a council to agree to that at some stage in the near future. Do you think that we should be asking for greater engagement on that plan, given its significance to communities who may not have had a chance to participate?
Yeah, I think so. I think it slipped under the radar with a lot of communities, and more engagement would be great. So, as we explain in our submission, we just didn't have time to do it. Normally we would do that. I put in a personal submission, but it was a personal submission that was done on the night that the submissions were due. Yeah. And, you know, it takes a lot of time for an organisation to get some feedback, but it is such an important plan that, I think it needs more people to come and input, and asking for more input would be great. We hopefully would be able to participate in that.
Yeah, okay. No, that's...
Phil.
Thank you, David, very much for your very constructive submission. Just around the LAP policy, which we have let go, you'll be aware, David, that it became, in effect, extremely difficult to have a LAP to actually make it effective too, until central government changes the Sale of Liquor Act. And so we, as a council, can ask them to do that, so that in fact will make it easier for residents groups and associations like yours to actually oppose some of the licensing outlets. So would your resident association also support council if we make a strong submission to government, central government, to make changes in that law?
Yeah, so we have already been talking to our local MPs on that topic. I guess I would say, though, with all due respect, Dunedin has gone through the process, and it took them an awful lot of work to do that, but at the end of the day, they got a local alcohol policy which is in place and functioning. And while, you know, having a strategic view in terms of changing the actual Act itself, the reality of alcohol legislation is that it's a bit of a long haul because of the conscience vote that happens in Parliament. And I guess what we would see is, sure, we do need to go and Council too, need to work together with MPs to try and drive changes with the legislation, but the legislation that exists at the moment makes provision for local alcohol policy, and so, you know, you can get on with it. And I guess the other thing is that if you look at the relationship between central government and local government is often very unhappy when central government tells it what to do. And we've got a case here where the legislation actually allowed local government, local communities to have a role in putting in places that were sensitive to their own communities. And as we say, Christchurch hasn't done that, Dunedin has, and a few other places have as well.
Thanks, David, that's very helpful.
I could contribute to that debate, and maybe we should have a debate about it at some stage, but we've taken up the time of the submission. So thank you very much for your submission. I would like to catch up with you on that matter, because the legislation the central government didn't do what it had to do to really back up what the local alcohol plan could do. So anyway, I won't hold you up now, but we will have a catch up on it.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.